A man can learn to sleep through gunfire, but he can't learn to sleep through a dog's silence. Ethan Cole had been out for 14 months when the postcard arrived. No return address, no stamp. Just a thin rectangle of paper waiting on the cheap welcome mat of his one-bedroom rental outside Duluth, Minnesota, where winter pressed against the windows like a living thing, and the lake wind never really stopped whispering. The front of the postcard showed a lighthouse, bright and cheerful, the kind tourists photographed in July. The back carried only 6 words, written in block letters so careful they looked printed. If you still trust him, go. Under it was a location, not an address, just a name that belonged to a dot of an old iron town at the edge of nowhere. Blaine's Junction. Ethan stared until the words began to feel like they were staring back. Then he looked at Rex. The dog was lying near the heater vent, chest rising slow, eyes half-lidded, pretending he hadn't been watching Ethan from the second the paper hit the mat. Rex didn't bark, didn't whine. He just got up, smooth, deliberate, walked over, and put his nose to the postcard like it had a smell. Then he sat. Ethan swallowed, because Rex only sat like that when the world was about to tilt. Not your business anymore, Ethan told the room, like saying it aloud could make it true. He had said it 100 times since discharge. Not your war, not your mission, not your problem. But the postcard didn't feel like a problem. It felt like a summons. And the worst part was the handwriting. Ethan had seen that exact block lettering in the margins of old training manuals, on taped-up maps, on a coffee-stained notepad that lived in the pocket of a man who never raised his voice and never wasted a word. A man named Grant Holloway. Grant had been Ethan's senior on a deployment that didn't exist on paper, the kind of assignment that got called advisory and ended with body bags. Grant wasn't family. He wasn't a friend in the easy civilian sense. He was something sharper, a compass, a voice in Ethan's ear when the world went loud, and Grant Holloway had died 3 weeks ago. At least that's what the email from the VA liaison had said. A heart event. A polite phrase that floated above the truth like a sheet over a body. Ethan had attended no funeral. He hadn't been invited. He hadn't been in the circle. He told himself he didn't care. But now, a postcard had shown up at his door like a ghost had learned to mail. He flipped it again. The lighthouse front smiled up at him in bright summer colors. Rex's gaze stayed fixed on the back, as if the message was for the dog more than for Ethan. Ethan exhaled through his nose. "All right," he muttered. "All right, we'll go look, that's all." We look, and we leave. Rex's tail thumped once, not happy. Confirmed. 2 hours later, Ethan's old pickup was chewing through a ribbon of highway that cut across frozen marshland and skeletal pines. Snow dusted the shoulders. The sky was the color of bruised metal. Blaine's Junction didn't show up on most GPS maps. It showed up on old freight schedules and the kind of worn-out county charts that still marked defunct rail spurs. The town had been built around iron once, then built around timber, then built around nothing at all. When Ethan rolled in, there was one gas station with half its letters missing, one bar with a neon sign that said, "Open," even though the windows were dark, and one line of rusted rail cars that sat like dead animals along an abandoned track. Rex's head rose higher as they passed the rail cars. Ethan didn't like the way the dog's ears angled forward, like he'd found something long before Ethan had even started looking. The postcard hadn't told him where to go, but Rex did. They stopped near the old spur where the track sank into weeds and snow. Ethan killed the engine. The wind took over, hard and cold, carrying the lake's damp bite. Rex jumped down, nose already working, pulling Ethan toward the line of rail cars without a leash, like the world didn't give Ethan the option of refusing. The cars were old, lumber cars, box cars, a tanker with peeling hazard symbols. And then Rex stopped, in front of a boxcar that looked no different than the others, except for one thing, a fresh padlock, steel bright enough to look wrong on something this dead. Ethan stared at it. His heartbeat did that slow, annoying thing it did when his instincts woke up. He checked around. No people, no movement, just wind and rust and distant crows. He approached the door. The padlock wasn't cheap, not a hardware store lock. It was the kind of lock you bought when you expected someone to try to break in. Rex sat again, right by Ethan's boot, waiting. Ethan touched the padlock. Cold bit his fingertips. Then he reached into his jacket pocket, because he'd felt the edge of something taped to the underside of the postcard earlier. A slight thickness, a hidden weight. He pulled it out now. A tiny brass key, no tag, no label, just a key. Ethan slid it into the padlock. It turned like it had been waiting for him. The lock popped open with a soft metallic click that sounded too loud in the empty yard. Ethan held still, listening. Nothing. Rex stood, ready. Ethan dragged the heavy boxcar door with both hands. Rust groaned. The door gave, inch by inch, until a black mouth opened in the side of the car. The smell that rolled out wasn't rot. It was oil, and old wood, and something faintly chemical, like burned plastic. Ethan lifted his flashlight. The beam cut into the dark and caught dust floating like slow snow. Inside the boxcar, someone had built a room. Not a full room, more like a crude office, boxed off by plywood walls bolted into the steel ribs of the car. There were shelves, a table, a folding chair, and in the center of the table, a small metal case. Ethan stepped in. Rex followed, quiet as shadow. The metal case was military green with scuffs that spoke of travel. A faded label clung to the lid. Holloway. Ethan's throat tightened. Grant, he whispered, and didn't know if he meant it like a curse or a prayer. The case had latches, no lock. Ethan flipped them open. The lid rose. Inside was not money, not weapons. It was worse. It was truth. A thick black notebook with Grant Holloway's careful block handwriting. A cheap flip phone with the screen smashed. A set of dog tags in a plastic bag. A flash drive. And a sealed envelope. Heavy paper. Ethan's name written across the front in the same block letters. Ethan didn't open it yet. He stared at it like it might bite. Rex nudged his leg, gentle, insistent. Ethan swallowed, then slid a finger under the seal and tore it open. The letter inside was short. No greeting, no apology. Just Grant, speaking the way he always had. Straight into the nerve. Ethan, if you're reading this, the first plan failed. That means I'm either dead, or I need you to believe I am. Do not call anyone. Do not report this. Do not trust uniforms. There's a name you'll see in the notebook. Do not say it out loud. They will come for you the moment you do. Rex will know before you do. If you want out, burn everything and walk away. If you want the truth, you'll have to move fast. Start with the red key taped under the table. Ethan's eyes flicked to the underside of the table. He crouched, swept the flashlight beam under the metal lip. There, taped neatly in place, was a small red plastic key. The kind used for storage lockers, safe deposit boxes, cheap locks. Ethan peeled it free. Rex's ears twitched. A sound outside? Ethan froze, listening. Wind, metal creaking, a faint crunch. Not the wind. Snow compressing under a boot. Ethan turned his light toward the boxcar opening and saw nothing. Just gray daylight and drifting snow. But Rex's body had changed, muscles tight, head low, eyes locked on the door. Rex gave a soft, deep sound in his throat. Not a bark, a warning. Ethan didn't think. He moved. He snapped the case shut, scooped the notebook and envelope, shoved the flash drive into his pocket. Then he killed the flashlight and crouched, pulling Rex down with him behind the plywood wall as the boxcar door began to slide again. Slow, careful. Someone was opening it from the outside. Ethan held his breath. The door moved an inch, then two. A slice of pale light cut across the floor. A shadow fell into it, tall, narrow. Then a voice drifted in, calm as a man ordering coffee. Hello? Not a local voice, not a drunk guy from the bar. Professional, controlled. Ethan's hand slid toward the knife he always carried, even when he told himself he was done. Rex's lips lifted just enough to show teeth in the dim. The voice spoke again, closer. We can do this the easy way. Ethan's mind went cold and clear. He could hear the wah man's breathing now, the soft scuff of boots, the faint clink of gear. Not one man, two. Ethan counted the footfalls by sound alone, one near the door, one staying outside, offset, covering. They were hunting, not searching. They knew what was here, They knew it belonged to someone. Ethan tightened his grip on his knife. Then Rex did something that made Ethan's stomach drop. The dog shifted, not toward the opening, toward the far wall, toward a plywood panel Ethan hadn't noticed at first, because it blended with the crude construction. Rex nudged it with his nose, then pawed. A hollow sound answered. A hidden space. Ethan's eyes widened. Grant's note? Start with the red key. Ethan crawled to the panel and found a tiny lock embedded near the bottom. He slid in the red key. It turned. The panel popped loose, revealing a narrow gap, and behind it, a crawl space between plywood and steel, just big enough for a man to squeeze through. Ethan didn't hesitate. He pushed Rex in first. The dog slid like liquid into the darkness. Ethan followed, pulling the panel back behind him, just as the voice inside the boxcar muttered, "There's a build-out in here." A hand slapped the plywood wall near Ethan's face. So close, Ethan felt the vibration through the thin wood. He stayed still. He didn't breathe. Rex didn't move. Seconds stretched. Then the outside man said something low, too quiet to hear. The inside man grunted. "I don't like it," he said, his voice suddenly sharper. "This feels staged." A pause. Then, "Find it." Boots shifted. A beam of light flared as a flashlight swept the interior. The light hit the plywood panel Ethan had just locked back into place. Ethan's heartbeat punched once. The beam paused, then moved on. The man inside exhaled. "We should have been quicker," he said. "Boss wants it today." Boss, not police, not FBI, private. Ethan's skin prickled. The man outside answered, "Then we'll take the backup." The man inside cursed under his breath. The flashlight beam swung back. This time, it dropped lower, toward the table, toward the spot where the envelope had been. Ethan heard the man's breath change. "Took it," the man inside said. "Someone already took it." Silence. Then the voice outside, cold now. "So we take the person." Ethan's jaw tightened. Rex's body pressed against Ethan's thigh, still as a statue. The men backed out of the boxcar, their movements fast and tight now. Predators realizing prey had moved. The door slid shut with a grinding thud. Then came the padlock. Clink. Locked. They were trapping whoever was inside. Ethan waited 5 seconds. 10. Then Rex shifted deeper into the crawl space, moving toward the far end like he'd already memorized the route. Ethan followed. The crawl space ran along the length of the car to a rear panel, another hidden hatch. Grant had built an escape path. He'd planned for this. Ethan pushed the hatch and felt it give. Cold air rushed in. He slipped out behind the boxcar into a narrow strip of dead weeds and snow, out of sight of the main yard. Rex emerged beside him, eyes scanning. Ethan stayed low and moved along the line of cars, using rusted steel as cover. He reached the corner and peeked. 2 men stood near the front of the car. Both wore dark jackets, gloves, beanies pulled low. But their posture gave them away. Too alert, too balanced. Hands too close to where guns lived. One of them held a phone to his ear. "Yes," he said. "Someone got to it. No, I didn't see who. But it's Ethan Cole's truck. We can wait him out." Ethan's blood turned to ice. They knew his name already. They had a file. They had a plan. Rex stared at the men. Then Rex looked at Ethan and turned his head toward the town. Not toward the truck, toward the road, toward movement. Ethan followed the dog's gaze and saw, through the drifting snow, a third vehicle rolling slowly into the yard. Black SUV, no markings, windows tinted dark. The kind of vehicle that didn't belong in Blaine's Junction. The kind that carried decisions. Ethan backed away, silent, pulling Rex with him into the weeds. He didn't go to his truck. He didn't go to the bar. He went the only place he could think of that still belonged to him. The old spur line that ran behind town into the trees. He ran. Rex ran with him, perfectly matched. Behind them, a voice yelled, sharp, startled. "Hey!" Then another. "There!" Footsteps pounded. Snow exploded under boots. Ethan didn't look back. He dove into the tree line, branches whipping his face, lungs burning with cold. A gun didn't fire. That was the part that scared him most, because it meant they weren't allowed to make noise yet. They wanted him alive. He pushed deeper until the forest swallowed the rail yard, until the only sounds were wind and Rex's breath and Ethan's own heartbeat trying to break out of his ribs. He stopped behind a fallen pine, crouched low, and opened Grant's notebook with shaking fingers. The pages were filled with names, dates, numbers, logistics, routes, payments, coded shorthand. And one name kept appearing, circled again and again like a warning, not said out loud. Ethan mouthed it silently. Kestrel Ridge. He didn't know what it was. A place, a company, a project. Then he saw a page where Grant had written one sentence in bigger block letters, like he'd wanted it to slap whoever found it. Kestrel Ridge is not security. It's cleanup. Ethan swallowed hard. Cleanup. He'd heard that word in different contexts. Bodies, evidence, problems. And suddenly Grant's heart event didn't feel like a medical issue. It felt like a message. Ethan flipped further. A map sketch. A location marked 2 hours west. An old paper mill outside a town called Iron Falls. And under the sketch, another line. If they find the ledger, they bury the truth with you. Ledger. So, this notebook was a ledger. And the flash drive in Ethan's pocket was probably the match. Ethan's hands tightened. Rex pressed against him, warm and solid, eyes scanning the trees. Ethan leaned close to the dog's ear. Okay, he whispered, we do it your way. Rex's tail flicked once. Not happy. Ready. By nightfall, Ethan had made it back to the highway without being seen. He didn't go home. Home was a trap now. He drove with his lights off through back roads, staying off the main routes, the way Grant had taught him years ago when they were moving through places that didn't want them. And when he needed a place to breathe, he found it in the last place anyone would look for a man trying to disappear. A small-town veterinary clinic with one light still on. Because the sign in the window said, "Emergencies only." Ethan parked behind the building and stepped out with Rex. The dog limped, just slightly. Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't noticed it earlier. Adrenaline had lied to him. "Let me see," Ethan murmured, kneeling. Rex didn't resist. He never did. A small cut on the paw pad, probably from metal in the rail yard. Ethan wrapped it with a strip of cloth from his pack, but he knew it needed cleaning. He went to the back door and knocked twice. A woman opened it after a long pause. She looked mid-30s, hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing scrubs and a tired expression that said she'd been alone too long. Her eyes landed on Ethan's face, then on Rex, then narrowed. "We're closed," she said. Ethan kept his voice low, controlled. "My dog's hurt." The woman's gaze flicked to Rex's paw. Then she noticed Ethan's hands, scarred, steady, not shaking like a normal stranger's would at a late-night clinic door. She studied him for a beat too long. "You're not from here," she said. "No," Ethan answered. "And I don't have anywhere else to go." Something shifted in her face. Not softness, not trust. Recognition, like she'd heard that sentence before. She opened the door wider. "Bring him in." Inside smelled like antiseptic and old linoleum. The woman guided Rex onto a steel exam table with quiet competence. "What happened?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. Then he told a truth that wasn't the whole truth. Metal in an old rail yard. She cleaned the cut, her fingers quick and gentle, and Rex didn't flinch once. The woman glanced at Ethan. "Good dog," she said softly. Ethan's eyes stayed on Rex. "He's the reason I'm still here." The woman finished wrapping the paw and stepped back. "Keep it clean, no running for 2 days." Ethan almost laughed at that. 2 days. He couldn't promise 2 minutes. The woman wiped her hands, then looked Ethan over again. "Name," she said. Ethan paused. "Ethan? And your dog?" "Rex." She nodded. "I'm Mara." Ethan hadn't heard the last name, but her badge said Mara Klein, DVM. Mara's eyes dropped to the inside of Ethan's jacket where the corner of the envelope was visible. "What are you carrying?" she asked carefully. Ethan's pulse ticked up. "Nothing you want to be part of." Mara's face tightened. "Then why did you bring it to my door?" Ethan didn't have a good answer. Maybe because the world had narrowed. Maybe because his dog had been bleeding and Ethan couldn't treat him in the dark. Maybe because he'd learned the hard way that sometimes you didn't get to choose your allies. Rex whined, soft, not fear, urging. Ethan exhaled. "Someone's dead," he said, "and they left me something, and now other people want it." Mara stared. "Police?" Ethan shook his head once. "Worse." Silence filled the little clinic. Then Mara surprised him. She didn't step back. She didn't ask for details. She walked to the front window and flipped the sign from open to closed, then pulled the blinds. When she turned back, her voice was quiet. "I grew up here," she said. "My father worked at the paper mill until it shut down. People came through after, men in nice boots and expensive coats. They offered jobs, security contracts, cleanup work." Ethan's blood ran colder. Mara continued. "Then folks started disappearing." Ethan didn't speak. Mara looked at him like she'd decided something. "I don't know what you're holding," she said, "but if it's tied to those men, then it's my business." Ethan felt that old instinct rise. Don't involve civilians. But Mara wasn't a civilian in the way he meant. She was already living inside the consequences. He pulled out the flash drive and set it on the counter between them like a live round. Mara's eyes narrowed. "What's on it?" Ethan's voice dropped. "Proof." Mara swallowed. Then she reached under the counter and pulled out a laptop that looked too rugged for a vet clinic. "I have spotty internet," she said, "but I have eyes." They plugged the drive in. A folder opened. Inside were videos, photos, scanned documents, shipping manifests, payment trails, surveillance stills, and one clip that made Ethan's stomach twist. Grant Holloway, on camera, speaking into the lens like he knew the viewer would be Ethan. His face looked thinner, eyes sharper. Behind him was a concrete room, dimly lit. Grant's voice was calm. "If you're seeing this," Grant said, "I'm not in control anymore. Kestrel Ridge has been operating under government subcontract language, but they're off-leash. Their job is to erase mistakes. Their mistakes are people." Ethan's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Grant continued. "They've been running transport out of Iron Falls, the old mill. They're using the underground pulp tunnels. They move cargo at night, not paper. People." Mara's hand went to her mouth. Ethan's vision narrowed. Grant's eyes in the video held something like regret. "I tried to stop it through channels," he said. "The channels are compromised, so I'm doing it my way. Ethan, I'm sorry. I know you want it out, but you're the only person I trust to finish it." The video ended. The clinic felt suddenly too small, like the walls leaned in. Mara whispered, "Jesus." Ethan stared at the black screen. Then he heard it. A faint crunch outside. Snow under a boot. Rex's head snapped up, ears forward. Mara's eyes widened. Ethan didn't move fast. He moved correct. He killed the laptop lid quietly, pulled the drive, stuffed everything into his jacket. He put a hand on Rex's collar. Mara whispered, "You're being followed." Ethan nodded once. Then the front door handle rattled. A pause. Then a knock, polite. Controlled. Mara backed away. Ethan stayed still, listening. A man's voice called through the door, friendly as a neighbor. "Evening. We're looking for a guy who might have stopped here. Tall, dark jacket, has a German shepherd." Ethan's blood went icy. Mara's gaze flicked to Ethan. Ethan gave her a look that meant, "Don't open it." The man outside continued, still gentle. "Just want to make sure everybody's safe." Ethan stepped back into the shadow of the hallway, pulling Rex with him. Mara took one breath, then walked toward the door, voice steady. "We're closed." The man chuckled softly. "I see the light on. Come on, Doc. We're not here to bother you." Doc. He knew who she was. Ethan's spine tightened. Mara didn't open the door. "Call in the morning." A pause. Then the voice changed, still calm, but the friendliness drained out like water from a sink. "We can do this two ways." Ethan felt Rex's muscles coil. Then the back window shattered. Glass exploded. A body moved through the frame, fast. Ethan surged. Rex launched. The intruder barely had time to raise his weapon before Rex hit him with 90 pounds of fury and training, slamming him into the tile. Ethan was on him a fraction later, knife out, wrist pinned, gun kicked away. The man grunted, tried to twist. Ethan leaned close, voice like steel. "Who sent you?" The man's eyes flashed with something like amusement, even through pain. "You don't know what you opened," he hissed. Ethan struck him once, controlled, precise, and the man went limp. Outside, The front door handle rattled again. Harder now. They were breaching. Ethan looked at Mara. Her face was pale, but her eyes were awake, wide and bright with terror and resolve. "Back room," Ethan ordered. "Now!" Mara ran. Ethan grabbed the unconscious man's radio earpiece, tore it free, listened. Static. Then a voice. "Go! Go! Go!" Footsteps pounded around the building. Ethan made a decision in the space of one heartbeat. He couldn't hold the clinic. Not with Rex injured, not with Mara untrained, not with numbers unknown. He shoved a shelf against the back door, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and sprayed the front entryway with white foam as the lock snapped and the door burst inward. Men flooded in, 3, maybe 4. Moving with that smooth, coordinated aggression Ethan knew too well. They weren't small-town thugs. They were contractors, clean, silent, efficient. Ethan moved like he'd never left. He hit the first man with the extinguisher, hard, then drove his shoulder into the second. Rex, limping slightly, still launched at the third, teeth clamping onto a forearm and yanking him off balance. A gun barked, suppressed, but loud in the small clinic. A round punched into the wall. Mara screamed from the back, not in panic, but warning. Ethan glanced and saw a fourth man moving toward the hallway where Mara had gone. Ethan didn't chase. He threw his knife. It hit the man's thigh and dropped him with a grunt. The first man recovered, swung his weapon toward Rex. Ethan's world narrowed. He hit the man's wrist with a brutal strike. The gun flew. Rex snarled, backing away, guarding Ethan like a wall. Ethan grabbed Mara from the hallway. "Move!" he snarled. They ran through the back door into the night, into snow that swallowed sound. They didn't go to the road. They went into the woods behind the clinic, the same woods that led toward the old mill, because the hunters had already found them, which meant Ethan's only chance wasn't running. It was cutting the head off. 2 hours later, Ethan and Mara crouched on a ridge overlooking Iron Falls Paper, the abandoned mill that sat like a dead giant beside a black river. The moon was thin. The clouds moved fast. Rex lay beside Ethan, breathing steady, bandage darkened but holding. Mara whispered, "There are lights." Ethan nodded. Inside the mill, faint glows moved, flashlights, headlamps, vehicles, and something else. A low hum that didn't belong in a dead building. Generators. They were active. They were operating. Grant's video wasn't old history. It was now. Ethan whispered, "You can still leave." Mara's jaw tightened. "You saw the files. You heard him. If I leave, I'm just waiting to be next." Ethan didn't argue. He respected that kind of truth. Rex lifted his head and stared at the mill. Then he did it again, stood, sniffed the air, and turned his head toward the riverbank. Ethan followed the dog's gaze and saw a dark cut in the earth near the water. An entrance half hidden by brush. Old pulp tunnel access. Ethan exhaled. "They're not using the main doors," he murmured. "They're using the belly." Mara whispered, "How do we stop them?" Ethan's eyes stayed on the mill. "We get the ledger into the right hands," he said, "and we get proof that can't be buried." Mara frowned. "The right hands? Like police?" Ethan's lips tightened. "No," he said. "Like someone who hates Kestrel Ridge as much as Grant did." Mara looked at him. Ethan pulled the black notebook from his pack and flipped to a page he hadn't understood earlier. Numbers, a contact code, a frequency. At the bottom, Grant had written 2 words. "Call June." Mara blinked. "June who?" Ethan's voice was low. "June Ramirez." Mara's face changed. "The journalist?" Ethan nodded once. June Ramirez had done a series years ago, exposing private military contractors, laundering money through security contracts. Her sources had gone quiet. Her editor had been threatened. She'd almost vanished. Almost. Ethan hadn't thought of her in years. But Grant had. Grant had planned for Ethan to need someone with a megaphone. Ethan pulled out the smashed flip phone from the case, turning it over until he found what Grant must have known Ethan would look for. The back cover popped loose. Inside was a tiny SD card. Mara inhaled sharply. Ethan stared at it. "Back up," he muttered. He knew they'd take the obvious thing. Rex's ears flicked. A sound below. A vehicle door. A muffled shout. Movement near the tunnel entrance. Ethan slipped the SD card into Mara's palm. You run this to somewhere with signal, he whispered. You upload, you send it to June, you send it everywhere. Mara's eyes widened. What about you? Ethan looked down at Rex, then back at the mill. I'm going to make them look at me, he said. So they don't look at you. Mara swallowed. That's suicide. Ethan's voice didn't change. It's math. Rex rose to his feet, stepping in front of Ethan like the dog had decided the same. Ethan's hand rested on Rex's neck, fingers digging into fur. No, Ethan whispered. You stay with her. Rex didn't move. Ethan tried again, firmer. Rex, stay. Rex looked at Ethan, eyes dark, unwavering, and Ethan felt the old fear. Not fear of dying, fear of being left without the one thing that had kept him human. Mara's voice cracked softly. He's not leaving you. Ethan exhaled, almost a laugh without humor. Fine, he whispered. Then we do it together. They moved down the ridge, staying in shadows, following the river line toward the tunnel entrance. The air near the mill smelled like wet concrete and old chemicals. The river hissed under ice. They reached the brush line and saw two men at the entrance, one scanning the river, the other checking a clipboard under a headlamp, like this was just another delivery. And then Ethan saw it, a third figure emerging from the tunnel, hood up, moving with a limp. For one insane second, Ethan thought, but no, not Grant. This man was heavier, slower, carrying something wrapped in plastic. They were moving cargo. Ethan's stomach turned. Mara whispered, "Oh my God." Ethan's mind locked into mission mode. He didn't rush in blind. He grabbed a rock and tossed it into the brush across the riverbank. A sharp crack echoed. One guard snapped his head toward it. "Check it!" the clipboard guy hissed. The first guard moved away from the entrance, stepping into the dark. Ethan moved like a shadow. Rex went first, silent as smoke, circling wide. Ethan slipped up behind the remaining guard and pinned him hard against the concrete, forearm across throat. The guard's eyes widened. Ethan whispered, "How many inside?" The guard tried to twist. Rex appeared from the dark and put his teeth an inch from the man's wrist. Promise, not bite. The man froze. 6, he choked. 6 inside, 2 outside. SUV coming back with the boss. Boss. Ethan's jaw tightened. Mara whispered, "What boss?" The guard's eyes flicked to her, then to Ethan. He swallowed and said it like it tasted bad. "Wyatt Crane." Ethan went still. The name punched him somewhere deep. Wyatt Crane wasn't a faceless contractor. Wyatt Crane was a man Ethan had seen once in a green zone, shaking hands, smiling for cameras with generals. Wyatt Crane spoke on panels about ethical stabilization. Wyatt Crane wore clean suits and clean lies, and Grant Holloway had died 3 weeks ago. Ethan's voice dropped. "Grant didn't have a heart event," he said. The guard trembled. "No." Mara's eyes burned. "Then what?" Ethan's gaze stayed on the tunnel mouth, the dark throat of the mill. "They executed him," Ethan whispered, and called it natural. Then Rex growled, low, deep. The kind of sound that meant the next move was already happening. Headlights flared on the far access road. A black SUV rolled in. Slow, confident, like it owned the night. Ethan felt his pulse slow into that cold place. The vehicle stopped. The driver got out first, scanning. Then the passenger door opened, and a man stepped out wearing a wool coat, like the weather was mild, tall, silver at the temples. Calm posture. Wyatt Crane. He didn't look like a killer. That was the trick. He looked like a man who signed contracts and slept well. Crane glanced toward the tunnel entrance, then toward the river. He smiled faintly. Not warm. Satisfied. He spoke to someone near him, voice carrying just enough. "Find Cole," he said. "He's closer than he thinks." Ethan's grip tightened on the guard. Crane's eyes shifted, sharp now, scanning the darkness like he could feel Ethan's presence the way predators could feel prey. Then Crane spoke again, almost casually. "If he won't hand over the ledger," Crane said, "bring me the dog. Dogs make men obedient." Ethan's blood went hot. Rex's growl vibrated through the air. Mara's breath hitched. Ethan realized the terrifying part. Crane didn't just want the evidence. He wanted control. He wanted to break Ethan the way you broke a weapon you couldn't disarm. Ethan leaned to Mara, voice razor thin. You take the SD card and go, now. Mara shook her head. I'm not leaving you. Ethan's eyes didn't move. You're not leaving me. You're saving everyone who doesn't have a knife and a dog. Mara's throat worked. Rex nudged her hand. Once, like he understood the trade. Mara's eyes filled, but she blinked it away. Then she slipped back into the brush, moving fast and low. Ethan watched her go, then turned his focus to Crane. The guards near the tunnel shifted, alerted by something. Maybe Rex's growl, maybe the wrong silence. Ethan made his choice. He shoved the guard he'd pinned into the tunnel entrance wall, hard enough to drop him, and stepped out of the darkness into the open riverbank, visible under the SUV's headlights. Rex stepped beside him like a living shadow. Every head snapped toward Ethan. Crane's smile widened slightly. Well, Crane said, voice smooth. There you are. Ethan didn't answer. He just stood, because talking gave the other man control. Crane took a slow step forward, hands relaxed at his sides. Your mentor was a stubborn man, Crane said. He thought a notebook could stop a machine. Ethan's eyes didn't blink. Crane continued. Now you have it, and you're going to make this easy. Ethan's voice was low, steady. You killed him. Crane's face showed polite confusion, an actor on stage. Grant Holloway died of stress, Crane said. Stress is sad, but predictable. Ethan smiled without humor. You're lying. Crane's eyes sharpened, finally showing something colder under the suit. Ethan, Crane said, almost kindly, you're a good soldier. You want a clean enemy, a flag, a uniform, but this world runs on gray. Ethan felt Rex's body tense. Crane's gaze dropped to Rex. A beautiful animal, Crane said. Loyal, useful. Ethan's hand tightened on Rex's collar. Crane looked back at Ethan. Hand it over. Ethan didn't. Crane's voice stayed calm. Then we take what motivates you. A guard raised a weapon slightly toward Rex. Ethan's world narrowed into a single line. He moved. Rex moved. Everything became speed and instinct. Ethan lunged toward the nearest guard, ripping the weapon away as Rex slammed into another man's legs, dropping him hard. Shots popped, suppressed, sharp. Snow jumped near Ethan's feet. Ethan drove the stolen weapon into a man's throat, not killing, just disabling, then rolled behind a concrete support as bullets chewed the riverbank. Crane stepped back, annoyed now, his control slipping. Careful, he snapped. Don't ruin the evidence. Ethan's mind registered the phrase. Don't ruin the evidence. So Crane still believed Ethan had the notebook and drive on him. Good. Let him believe that. Ethan tossed the notebook, wrapped in plastic, into the river. It splashed, then vanished into black. Crane's face twisted. What did you do? Ethan didn't answer, because he hadn't thrown the real evidence. He'd thrown bait. Crane barked, Get it! 2 men broke toward the waterline. Rex launched, jaw clamping onto one man's sleeve and dragging him back like he weighed nothing. The man screamed. The other hesitated. Ethan surged from cover, struck him, hard, and drove him into the snow. Crane's eyes flared with real anger now. He reached into his coat and drew a pistol, no suppressor this time. Old school, personal, he aimed it at Rex. Ethan's body moved without permission. He threw himself between gun and dog. Crane's finger tightened, and then, before the shot, a siren wailed in the distance. Not one, several. Blue and red lights flickered on the access road. Crane froze, head snapping toward the sound. Ethan's heart slammed. Mara. She'd gotten signal. She'd done it. The sirens grew louder, fast. Crane's lips curled. He didn't look scared. He looked disappointed. He leaned close enough for Ethan to hear him over the wind. You think uniforms stop me? Crane murmured. I employ them. Then Crane did something that made Ethan's stomach drop. He smiled and turned his gun slightly, not at Rex now, toward the tunnel entrance. Then he fired. A single loud crack. A man near the entrance dropped. Crane shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. Shots fired! He's got hostages! He was framing Ethan, right here, right now. Ethan's blood went cold, because that was the real weapon, not bullets, narrative. Crane stepped back toward the SUV, eyes never leaving Ethan. Run, Crane said softly. If you run, you look guilty. Ethan's mind raced. If he stayed, Cops would arrive to a scene with gunfire, bodies, and Ethan, armed former operator, with a dog. Crane would walk away clean. If he ran, he'd be hunted. Crane would bury the story anyway. Ethan looked at Rex. Rex looked at him. And in Rex's eyes, Ethan saw the one thing Grant had written that mattered most. Rex will know before you do. Rex's ears shifted, not toward the sirens, toward the river, toward the spot where Ethan had thrown the bait. Rex moved, fast, splashing into the shallow edge and pulling something back out with his teeth. Not the notebook, a small waterproof bag. The one Ethan hadn't even realized Mara had clipped to Rex's harness earlier. Mara had planned for this. The SD card backup, sealed, tied to Rex. Ethan's throat tightened. He understood. They didn't need Ethan to win a fight tonight. They needed the truth to survive the night. Ethan grabbed the bag from Rex's mouth, then clipped it back onto Rex's harness with shaking hands. He crouched close to Rex's face, voice low and fierce. "Go to her," he whispered. "Find Mara. Go." Rex didn't move. Ethan gripped the dog's cheeks, forcing Rex to look at him. "Rex, that's an order." Rex's eyes held Ethan's for one long, brutal second. Then Rex turned and ran into the brush, heading the way Mara had gone, fast, silent, vanishing like a shadow into the trees. Ethan stood, alone now, in a snow-slick riverbank with sirens coming and a man in a wool coat smiling like he'd already won. Crane raised his hands as the first squad cars slid in at the edge of the mill yard. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. "Drop it! Hands up!" Ethan didn't run. He didn't reach for a gun. He raised his hands slowly, because he knew the only move left was patience. Crane stepped forward, face painted with concern. "Thank God," Crane called out. "I'm Wyatt Crane. I'm with Kestrel Ridge Security. We got an anonymous tip about trafficking, and this man attacked us. He has evidence. He's unstable." Ethan stared at Crane. Crane's eyes glittered. He leaned closer, voice too soft for anyone else. "You should have walked away," Crane whispered. Ethan's voice was barely audible. "You should have killed the dog." Crane's smile faltered, just a hair, because for the first time, Crane realized Rex wasn't here, and something was missing from the equation. Ethan let the officers cuff him. He let them push him to the snow. He let them believe the story for now, because the truth was already running through the woods on 4 paws, headed toward a woman with a laptop and a signal and a name that could set the world on fire. And as Ethan's cheek pressed into cold snow and his breath came out in slow white ghosts, he thought about Grant Holloway's letter. If you want out, burn everything and walk away. If you want the truth, you'll have to move fast. Ethan had moved fast. Now he had to endure. Hours later, in a Stark County holding room that smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, Ethan sat with his wrists cuffed to a metal bar. A deputy watched him through glass like Ethan was a bomb that might decide to go off out of boredom. Ethan's mind stayed locked on Rex, on Mara, on whether the SD card had made it, on whether June Ramirez would pick up the phone. Then the overhead TV in the corner clicked on. Local news. A young anchor's face appeared, professional smile shaky. "Breaking news tonight," she said, as a series of leaked documents and video files have surfaced alleging illegal detention and trafficking operations tied to private security contractors operating across northern Minnesota. Ethan's breath stopped. The anchor continued. Sources confirmed the files were delivered simultaneously to multiple newsrooms, federal watchdog groups, and independent journalists, including award-winning investigative reporter June Ramirez, who has released a statement confirming the material appears authentic. The deputy's face drained of color. Ethan stared at the screen. In the footage, Grant Holloway's face appeared, calm, certain. Then a shot of the Iron Falls Mill tunnel. Then documents with Kestrel Ridge's name, signatures, routing numbers. The anchor's voice shook. This could trigger a federal investigation. Ethan closed his eyes for a second, letting the relief hit like pain. Rex had made it. Mara had made it. Crane's narrative was cracking. Then the holding room door opened. A man stepped in, older, in a plain suit, no badge displayed. His eyes were hard, tired, and sharp in a way Ethan recognized immediately. The deputy stood straighter. "Yes, sir." The suit waved him out. The deputy left, confused and nervous. The suit sat across from Ethan, folded his hands, and looked at Ethan like he was reading a report and deciding whether to burn it. "You're Ethan Cole," the man said. Ethan didn't answer. The man nodded slightly. "You were trained to fight visible enemies." Ethan stared. The man continued. "But tonight you fought something else, something that hides behind contracts." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Who are you?" The man's expression didn't change. "A person Grant Holloway trusted," he said. "A person who didn't get to him in time." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. The man slid a thin folder across the table. Inside was a photo of Mara, standing outside a motel, Rex beside her, both of them alive. Ethan's shoulders loosened by an inch. The man watched him carefully. "She's safe," he said. "For now." Ethan's voice came out rough. "And Crane?" The man's gaze hardened. "Wyatt Crane just boarded a private plane out of Duluth 40 minutes ago," he said. "But he's leaving behind a trail of digital fire that will follow him." Ethan's hands clenched. The man leaned in slightly. "This isn't over," he said. "Crane won't disappear. Men like him don't retire. They relocate." Ethan's eyes stayed cold. "What do you want from me?" The man held Ethan's gaze. "What Grant wanted," he said quietly. "A soldier who doesn't flinch when the enemy wears a suit." Ethan felt the old weight settle onto his shoulders, not the uniform, the responsibility. The man slid a key across the table, simple, brass. "No names," he said. "No paperwork. If you walk away, no one will blame you. If you don't—" Ethan looked down at the key. Then he thought of Rex running through snow with a truth strapped to his harness. He thought of Mara, alone, refusing to look away. He thought of Grant Holloway's calm eyes in the video, speaking like a man who already knew the cost. Ethan lifted his gaze. "I'm not walking away," he said. The man nodded once. No smile, no praise, just acknowledgement. "Then we start by getting your dog back to you," he said. Ethan's throat tightened at that, tight enough it almost hurt. Outside, the wind kept moving, the lake kept breathing, and somewhere in a cheap motel room, with the blinds shut, Rex lay at Mara's feet, head on his paws, eyes open, listening, because loyal dogs never really sleep when the world is still dangerous. And Ethan Cole, sitting under fluorescent lights with cuffs on his wrists, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not peace, not closure, purpose. Because the truth had escaped, and now, the hunt had a new direction.